Today we're going to show you how to change the Fresh Food Door Gasket on your refrigerator, and it's a really easy job. All we're going to need is a 5/16 nut driver, a 1/4 inch nut driver, and a 5/16 socket and ratchet. Let me show you how we do it. Now the first step in this repair will be to turn the refrigerator off. So open the refrigerator door, set the controls off. Now next we're going to open the freezer door and remove any items that are on that freezer door. You need to put them back in the freezer or set them aside. Then we'll next remove the hinge cap for the upper hinge. Simply push it forward and it'll lift up in the front, slide it back, disengage it. And then we'll remove the 3 5/16 bolts that hold that hinge in place. It may be too tight for a nut driver, so we'll use our ratchet to loosen them. Then we can just lift up on that hinge, pull it out of the door. And then we can tilt that door forward, just rotate it open a bit, and then lift it off of the center hinge. And we can set that aside. Now before we remove the fresh food door, we'll want to make sure that we've removed all of the items that are on the shelves on the door. And we're next going to remove that single 5/16 hex head screw that secures the center hinge to the cabinet. We'll set that aside. You should be able to pivot that hinge away from the cabinet and just lift it out of the door and set that aside. We can now take the door and set it on a suitable work surface, and we can change that gasket. So just open it and lift it off the lower hinge, and off we go. Now to remove the old gasket, if you peel it back, you'll note that there is a metal strap that is held in place with 1/4 inch hex head screws, about every 4 inches, all the way around the perimeter of the door. That holds the inner door liner and the gasket to the outer door panel. It actually sandwiches that lower edge of that gasket between the inner door panel and the outer door panel. So we're going to start by removing all of those screws. And you may take note that the ones in the corner do not go through the metal strap. So we'll use caution when removing and reinstalling those so we don't crack that liner. And just continue to do that around all 4 sides of the door. Now, once we've got all of the screws removed, we can just lift up on that inner door panel, make sure it's separated all the way around, and then just pull the gasket away from the liner. You start in one corner and just work your way around. We'll leave the inner door panel roughly in position. And just remove that old gasket and discard it. Now before you install the new gasket, you should really have put that in some hot water or put it in your dryer and let it tumble for 10 or 15 minutes just to soften it up so that it'll be a little more pliable when we go to install it. Chances are you won't get it perfectly flat yet, but once we have it on the door and the door installed back on the refrigerator, it should only take a matter of a couple of days, and then that'll flatten itself right out and seal properly. So we'll start by just draping it around the liner, and then we're going to take that lower edge that has the slotted holes for the screws, and we're going to actually tuck that underneath the liner. So we'll start in one corner, tuck that into position, and then just work your way all along one side. Do the same on all 4 corners. Make sure it's hooked firmly around that liner. You may need to stretch it a bit to get it over there. Now the idea is to get that gasket so that it has a nice smooth fit to the outer door panel, and as well is completely in underneath the inner door liner so that the slotted holes line up with the holes through the metal retaining bracket and the actual holes in the door liner itself. So start by making sure the gasket is completely underneath the liner. Line it up over the center of one of the holes. insert the screw, but don't tighten it. Now, due to the number of screws involved, you will be tempted to use a cordless drill or cordless screwdriver to install these. And if you do, just make sure that you have the clutch setting set very low, because you don't want to strip the holes in the outer door panel so that the screws won't tighten up. And then just work your way along each individual side, installing a screw, skipping a spot, installing another one. But don't tighten any of them yet until we have it completely lined up. And just periodically check to make sure that we have a nice smooth fit to that outer door panel. And as mentioned earlier, take caution with the screws in the corners, as they do not have that metal strap to protect the inner door panel. And we also want to get a nice square edge when we put it around the corners. And just continue to do that all the way around, a little bit at a time, always making sure that that gasket is completely under the door liner. Now, once we've got all of the screws installed and checked to make sure that we have a nice clean fit all the way around, we're ready to reinstall the door. Now, before we reinstall that door, we need to make sure that the bottom hinge bushing is in good shape. If not, we'll need to replace that. And then we're just going to set that door on top of that hinge. And just pivot it into position. We'll take our center hinge. I'm going to set that down into the opening at the top of the door. Rotate the hinge so that it hooks that shoulder screw on the side of the cabinet. We'll take the 5/16 screw that we removed and put it into the center hole on that hinge. Now we'll put the freezer door back in position. Set that down over the center hinge. Rotate it into position. And then we'll install the top hinge. And place the hinge cover. Hook the back bit on first, push it forward, snap it into position. And lastly, remember to turn the refrigerator controls back on. And our repair is complete.